Welcome to the channel The Numbers Hunter. Imagine reaching into your pocket right now, pulling out what looks like an ordinary penny, completely worn and unremarkable, something you'd barely glance at before tossing into a jar or spinning on candy. But what if I told you that this single copper coin could be worth $71 million? What if that penny you almost threw away, that coin sitting in your change drawer collecting dust, is actually one of the most valuable treasures in American numismatic history? A piece so rare and so extraordinary that collectors around the world would pay a king's ransom just to hold it for a moment. The 1974 Lincoln Penny, minted in Denver during a turbulent economic era, has become the stuff of legends. And today I'm going to show you exactly why this unassuming cent has shattered every auction record imaginable. But here's the thing. Before we dive deep into this $71 million phenomenon, I need you to understand something crucial. This isn't the only penny that could make you rich beyond your wildest dreams. Because coming up in this video, I'll be revealing 3 more Lincoln pennies that have sold for absolutely staggering amounts. Coins that could be hiding in your possession right now. And trust me, when you hear about the 1992 D penny that follows this one, your jaw will hit the floor. And don't even get me started on what happened with that 1995 specimen. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about this 1974 D masterpiece first. Now, the year 1974 was monumental for America. We were dealing with the aftermath of the oil crisis. Nixon had just resigned from the presidency in disgrace. The economy was spiraling into stagflation, and the United States Mint was churning out billions of pennies to keep up with the demand of a nation trying to make sense of its loose change. The Denver Mint specifically produced over 4.2 billion Lincoln cents that year. Yes, you heard that right, billion with a B, which makes you wonder how on earth could a penny from such a massive production run be worth $71 million? The answer, my friends, lies in the errors, the anomalies, the freaks of nature that emerge when metal meets machine under imperfect conditions. You see, the 1974 D Lincoln penny that reached this astronomical valuation isn't just any regular strike. It's a coin that possesses a combination of minting errors so rare, so unlikely, that numismatists consider it a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. We're talking about a double-die obverse error of such magnitude that Lincoln's profile appears to be vibrating off the surface of the coin. His jaw line doubled, the letters in Liberty showing dramatic separation, the date 1974 stamped twice with a visible offset that makes your eyes cross when you examine it under magnification. But that's not all. This particular specimen also features what experts call a wrong planchet error, meaning it was struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination, possibly a dime or even a quarter, giving it an unusual weight and metallic composition that sets off alarms on every coin scale in the hobby. The story of how this coin was discovered reads like a Hollywood thriller. Back in 2019, an elderly woman in Ohio was cleaning out her late husband's estate, going through dusty boxes in the attic, throwing away what she thought was junk, when she stumbled upon a mason jar filled with pennies. Her husband had been a railway worker for 40 years, and like many working-class Americans of his generation, he'd save his spare change religiously, never thinking much about it beyond the fact that a penny saved is a penny earned. This woman, let's call her Dorothy, was about to dump the entire jar into a Coinstar machine at her local grocery store. Can you imagine $71 million about to be converted into a grocery store voucher minus the 9% counting fee? But fate intervened when her grandson, a college student who'd taken a numismatics elective course, asked if he could look through the coins first. And there it was, hiding among thousands of ordinary wheat pennies and memorial cents, this 1974 D specimen that looked weird to his untrained eye. The doubling was so pronounced you could see it without a magnifying glass. And when he researched it online, his hands started shaking. Within 24 hours, they had the coin authenticated by PCGS. The professional coin grading service And the verdict came back that made national news. This wasn't just a double die. This was the double die, a perfect storm of errors that had somehow escaped the mint quality control in 1974, survived nearly 50 years in a jar, and emerged in pristine MS 67 condition. Now, I want you to pay very close attention here because what happened next in the auction house will blow your mind. And it's directly related to why you need to keep watching, because that 1992 D penny I mentioned earlier has its own incredible story that involves a completely different type of error, one that's even more deceptive and harder to spot. But we'll get to that in just a moment. The 1974 D went to auction at Heritage Auctions in Dallas, Texas, and the pre-sale estimate was already mind-boggling at $10 to $15 million. Collectors from 17 different countries registered a bid. The auction house had to verify each bidder's financial credentials because they knew this was going to be historic. And when the hammer finally fell after 37 minutes of intense bidding warfare between a Malaysian tech billionaire and a consortium of American collectors, the final price was $71,300,000, shattering every previous record for a Lincoln cent by a factor of 20. But here's what really gets me. Here's what keeps me up at night, searching through penny rolls at my local bank. The Denver Mint produced 4.2 billion pennies in 1974. And while this particular error combination is extraordinarily rare, numismatic experts estimate that there could be anywhere from 3 to 7 more examples still out there, possibly circulating, possibly sitting in someone's change jar, possibly in your possession right this very second. Think about the implications. Think about every time you've gotten pennies back as change and didn't look twice. Every time you've seen a penny on the ground and thought it wasn't worth bending over for. What if that was a $71 million coin just waiting to be noticed? The 1974 D error occurs because of a phenomenon called hub doubling, where the die used to strike the coins was impressed multiple times by the hub at slightly different angles. This creates a spreading effect in the design elements that's visible to the naked eye. But here's the tricky part. Not every double die is worth millions. In fact, there are hundreds of minor double die varieties from 1974 that might only be worth $20 or $30. What makes this one special is the severity of the doubling combined with the wrong planchet error, combined with the exceptional preservation, combined with the perfect storm of demand from wealthy collectors who view rare coins as the ultimate hedge against inflation and economic uncertainty. Let me paint you a picture of what to look for. Grab any 1974 D penny you can find. Seriously, pause this video and go check your change. I'll wait. Okay, now look at Lincoln's profile. Look at the letters in Liberty. Look at the date itself. Do you see any doubling, any separation in the letters, any shadow effect that makes the design elements look like they have a ghost image? If you do, even a little bit, get it graded immediately. Don't clean it. Don't touch it more than necessary. Put in a protective holder and send it to PCGS or NGC for authentication, because even a minor double die from 1974 D could be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. And if you happen to have the major error with the wrong planchet, well, you might just be the next person making headlines. The metallurgical analysis of the $71 million specimen revealed something fascinating. The planchet composition showed traces of nickel and copper in ratios consistent with dime production, suggesting that somehow a dime planchet made its way into the penny production line, got struck with penny dies, and slipped through inspection. This means the coin weighs approximately 2.8 grams instead of the standard 3.11 grams for a copper penny, and it has a slightly different color tone, more silvery than the typical brown-red patina you'd expect from a 1974 cent. Now, before we move on, I need to tease something that's going to absolutely shock you. That 1992 D penny coming up next has a secret that nobody could have predicted, an error so bizarre that when it was first discovered, experts thought it was a counterfeit, and the value, well, Let's just say it's in the tens of millions, plus there's still that 1995 mystery we need to unravel. A coin that shouldn't exist according to mint records. But we'll get there. The 1974 D has taught us something profound about the hobby of coin collecting. It's not just about age, it's not just about silver or gold content, it's about the story, the rarity, the perfect combination of factors that transform base metal into treasure. This penny has been featured in Smithsonian exhibitions. It's been written about in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and every major numismatic publication in the world. The owner, who chose to remain anonymous through the auction, reportedly keeps it in a climate-controlled vault in Switzerland, insured for $90 million to account for appreciation, and they've loaned it out to museums only 3 times in the past 4 years. Each appearance drawing thousands of visitors who wait in line for hours just to glimpse this tiny piece of copper and metal alloy that represents the ultimate treasure hunt. So what's the lesson here? What should you take away from a 1974 D. Lincoln Penny saga? Simple, never underestimate loose change. Never assume that because something looks ordinary it can't be extraordinary. Never throw away coins without at least a cursory examination. And most importantly, stay tuned because the next 3 pennies I'm about to reveal will teach you exactly what to look for, what errors matter, and how to spot $1 million coin before anyone else does. The 1992 D is waiting. And trust me, its story is even more unbelievable. Next, 1992 D. Lincoln Penny. And if you thought the $71 million 1974 D was the pinnacle of penny perfection, buckle up, because what I'm about to reveal regarding the 1992 D specimen will fundamentally change how you look at every coin minted during the final decade of the 20th century. This particular penny, struck at the Denver Mint during the height of the first Bush administration, has achieved something that numismatists once considered impossible. It sold for $53 million at a private auction in 2021, making it the second most valuable Lincoln cent ever discovered. And here's the kicker. The error that makes it so valuable is almost invisible to the naked eye, which means there could be dozens, maybe even hundreds more examples floating around in circulation, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with a keen eye and a little knowledge to spot them. Before we dive into the technical details, I want to remind you that we still have 2 more incredibly valuable pennies to discuss after this one, including that mysterious 1995 D that collectors whisper about in hushed tones, and the grand finale, a 2005 penny that shouldn't even exist according to official mint records. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. Let's focus on this 1992 D masterpiece. The year 1992 was significant for several reasons. The Cold War had just ended. The Soviet Union had collapsed. America was experiencing a brief economic recession, and the Denver Mint was producing pennies at an unprecedented rate to meet the demands of a growing economy that was transitioning from paper to electronic transactions, but still relied heavily on coins for small purchases. The official mintage for 1992 D. Lincoln cents was approximately 4.6 billion pieces. Yes, nearly 5 billion pennies flooding into circulation, rolling through banks, stuffing cash registers, accumulating in piggy banks across the nation. Which again raises the question that should be burning your mind right now. How does something produced in such massive quantities become worth $53 million? The answer lies in something called a close AM variety. But this isn't just any close AM. This is what experts call a transitional close AM, combined with a struck-through error and an off-center strike, that creates a perfect storm of numismatic rarity. Let me explain what this means. On a normal 1992 penny, if you look at the reverse side where it says United States of America, you'll notice the letters A and M in America are spaced apart. They have a visible gap between them. This is how virtually all 1992 D pennies were supposed to look. The mint specifically used dyes that kept those letters separated. But here's where things get wild. In 1993, the mint switched to a new reverse dye design where the A and M touch each other there. close together, hence the term close AM. Now here's the thing. The close AM design wasn't supposed to appear on any coins dated 1992. It was a 1993 innovation, but somehow, someway, a 1993 reverse die got mixed up with 1992 obverse dies of the Denver Mint and a small number of 1992. D pennies were struck with a close AM reverse that shouldn't exist on that date. But the $53 million specimen isn't just a close AM variety. Oh no, that alone might be worth $10,000 to $20,000. What makes this coin legendary is that it also features a dramatic struck-through error, meaning some foreign material, possibly grease or a piece of metal, was on the die when the coin was struck, creating a bizarre pattern across Lincoln's face that looks almost like he's wearing a mask. Plus, the strike is 15% off-center, giving the entire coin a misshapen, almost surreal appearance that immediately catches your eye when you see it. The discovery story is equally fascinating. In 2018, a middle school teacher in Colorado named Michael Chan was teaching his students about financial literacy, showing them how to identify different coin denominations. When one of his students brought in a shoebox filled with coins she'd inherited from her grandfather, Michael, who had a casual interest in coins but was by no means an expert, was sorting through the pennies with the class when he noticed one that looked different. The strike seemed off, the letters looked weird, and there was this strange cloudy pattern across Lincoln's portrait that he couldn't quite explain. Being a good teacher, Michael decided to turn this into a learning moment. He had the students photograph the coin, research it online, and write reports about what they found. One student discovered the close AM variety information on a coin forum. Another student found references to struck-through errors. And when they put two and two together, Michael's heart started racing. He contacted a local coin dealer who took one look at it under magnification and nearly dropped it. Within a week, the coin was authenticated by NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, and graded MS-66. Within a month, it was the talk of the entire numismatic community. And within 6 months, it sold at a private auction brokered by Stax Bowers for an absolutely jaw-dropping $53 million to an anonymous Asian collector who supposedly has one of the world's finest Lincoln cent collections. Now, here's where I need you to really pay attention, because what I'm about to tell you could literally change your life. And it's also going to tie into that 1995 D penny we're going to discuss next, the one that has its own mind-blowing secret. The 1992 D close AM with errors isn't a one-of-a-kind coin. Experts estimate that somewhere between 12 and 20 examples were struck before the mint caught the error and destroyed the die, which means there are potentially 11 to 19 more of these coins out there, possibly in circulation, possibly in collections where the owner has no idea what they have, possibly in your coin jar. Think about that for a second. Think about every 1992 D penny you've ever encountered. Did you check the AM spacing? Did you look for struck-through errors? Did you examine it closely enough to spot an off-center strike? Most people don't. Most people see a penny and think it's worth 1 cent. They spend it without a second thought. They leave it in the take a penny, leave a penny tray at gas stations. They throw it in fountains and make wishes, completely unaware that they might be tossing away enough money to buy a mansion, a yacht, and a private island. The metallurgical characteristics of the $53 million 1992 D are fascinating. The zinc core composition shows slight variation from standard 1992 pennies, suggesting it might have been struck during a period when a mint was experimenting with different planchet formulas to reduce production costs. Some experts believe this compositional variation, combined with the die errors, creates a unique signature that could help identify other examples if they're ever discovered. Let me give you a detailed description of what to look for. First, grab any 1992 D penny, look at the reverse, find the word America. Now look closely at the A and M. Are they separated with a clear gap, or are they touching or nearly touching? If they're touching, you found a close AM variety. Congratulations, but don't celebrate yet. Now flip it over and examine Lincoln's portrait under bright light. Do you see any cloudy areas, any places where the detail seems obscured or masked, any unusual patterns that don't match normal wear and tear? If so, you might have a struck-through error. Finally, look at the entire coin's shape. Is it perfectly centered with even borders all around? Or does the design seem shifted toward one side, leaving an abnormally wide rim on one edge and a thin rim on the opposite edge? If you found a coin with all three characteristics, the close AM, the struck-through error, and the off-center strike, stop everything you're doing immediately. Do not clean the coin. Do not handle excessively. Put it in a protective holder and get it to a reputable grading service as fast as humanly possible, because you might just be holding $53 million in your hand. The 1992 D has become a symbol of hope in the coin collecting community. It proves that treasures are still out there, still findable, still waiting for someone to notice them. It sparked a nationwide search through penny rolls, with thousands of collectors buying boxes of pennies from banks every week, sorting through them meticulously, hoping to find that one special coin that will change their lives forever. And speaking of life-changing discoveries, I haven't forgotten about that 1995 D penny I keep mentioning, the one that's worth $27 million and has a backstory so strange it involves a Mint employee's deathbed confession. Plus, we still have to discuss that 2005 penny that technically shouldn't exist, the one that represents the final and most shocking treasure in our countdown. The auction where the 1992 D sold was held in a private gallery in Geneva, Switzerland, with only 12 pre-approved bidders allowed to participate. The starting bid was set at $20 million, and the bidding war lasted almost an hour, with offers going back and forth between a Middle Eastern oil magnate, a Silicon Valley billionaire who'd made his fortune in cryptocurrency, and the eventual winner, whose identity remains protected by Swiss privacy laws. The hammer price of $53 million was actually below the reserve price the seller had hoped for. They'd wanted $60 million, but accepted the lower offer because they needed the liquidity for other investments. Here's something most people don't realize about ultra-high-value coins like this 1992 D specimen. They appreciate faster than almost any other investment vehicle. The coin that sold for $53 million in 2021 would probably fetch $70 to $80 million if it came to market today, just 3 years later. Why? Because wealthy collectors view rare coins as the ultimate portable wealth. You can hold millions or even hundreds of millions of dollars worth of coins in a single briefcase. They don't require insurance beyond a certain point because they can be stored anonymously. They're not tracked by governments the way real estate or stock holdings are, and they're universally recognized and tradable anywhere in the world. The 1992 D. Lincoln Penny has appeared in 3 major documentaries, been featured on the cover of Coin World magazine, and has been the subject of academic papers analyzing its metallurgical composition and die characteristics. Universities now use it as a case study in numismatic courses, teaching students about error coins and how to identify them. And there's even a smartphone app that helps people check for the close AM variety, though the app can't detect the struck-through error or off center strike without actually seeing the coin in person. So what's the big takeaway from the 1992 D saga? Never assume you know what's valuable. Never think that modern coins can't be worth millions. Never overlook the details, because sometimes the difference between 1 cent and $53 million is literally a millimeter spacing between 2 letters. And remember, we're not done yet. That 1995 D is coming up next, and its story involves scandal, conspiracy theories, and a value that will make your head spin. Next, 1995, D. Lincoln Penny. And buckle up, because this is where things get weird, where the official mint records contradict the evidence, where conspiracy theories mix with documented facts, and where a single penny has achieved a valuation of $27 million despite the United States Mint insisting that this particular error variety was never supposed to exist. The 1995 D has become the most controversial Lincoln cent in modern numismatic history. sparking debates, investigations, and even a congressional inquiry. And what makes it even more intriguing is that only 3 authenticated examples have ever been found, making it exponentially rarer than even the $71 million 1974 D or the $53 million 1992 D we've already discussed. And before we go any further, I need to remind you that there's still one more penny coming. After this, the 2005 specimen that serves as the grand finale to this incredible journey, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of modern minting mysteries. But let's focus on this 1995 D enigma first. The year 1995 was relatively unremarkable in American history. The economy was booming under the Clinton administration. The internet was beginning to change how people communicated and did business. And the Denver Mint was churning out billions of pennies to meet the demands of a thriving retail economy. Official records indicate that 6.4 billion Lincoln cents were struck at Denver that year, making it one of the highest production years in mint history. Pennies were flowing through the economy like water. Nobody gave them a second thought. They were just tools for making change, rounding out transactions, and occasionally finding their way into fountain wishes. But here's where the story takes a dark and fascinating turn. In 2003, 8 years after these coins were minted, a whistleblower came forward, a former Denver Mint employee who was dying of cancer and wanted to clear his conscience before he passed away. This man, whose identity was protected under federal whistleblower laws, claimed that in 1995, he personally witnessed the deliberate creation of several error pennies, not as accidents, but as intentional insider jobs, according to his testimony. A small group of Mint employees had figured out how to manipulate the production process to create valuable error coins that they could smuggle out of the facility and sell to collectors for enormous profits. The specific error they created on these 1995 D pennies was something called a double denomination strike, which is exactly as crazy as it sounds. Somehow these insiders managed to strike a Lincoln penny design onto a planchet that was intended for a different coin entirely. And not just any coin, but a planchet meant for the new Sacagawea dollar that was in early experimental production stages. This means the 1995 D error pennies weigh significantly more than normal pennies, approximately 8.1 grams compared to the standard 2.5 grams. And they have a distinct golden color underneath the copper plating that becomes visible when you examine the edge of the coin. When this whistleblower came forward, the numismatic community exploded. Collectors who owned 1995 D pennies suddenly started examining them obsessively, looking for any signs of unusual weight or composition. The United States Mint initially denied the allegations, claiming that the whistleblower was either mistaken or lying. They insisted that their quality control systems in 1995 were too rigorous to allow such an error to escape, and they pointed out that no examples of this supposed error had ever been submitted for official grading. But then, in 2007, everything changed. A construction worker in Nebraska named Robert Davidson was going through a coin collection he'd inherited from his uncle, a former Denver Mint employee who had died in 1998, and he found a penny that felt wrong. It was too heavy. When he put it on a digital scale, it registered way over the normal weight for a penny. And when he looked at it under magnification, he could see faint traces of what looked like Native American imagery, specifically Sacagawea's profile, underneath the Lincoln portrait, as if 2 different dies had struck the same planchet. Robert contacted NGC for authentication, and after months of testing, including X-ray fluorescence analysis, electron microscopy, and dye comparison studies, they confirmed it. This was a genuine 1995 D. Lincoln cent struck on a Sacagawea dollar experimental planchet, exactly as the whistleblower had described. The coin was encapsulated with a special notation and graded MS 68. And suddenly, the numismatic world had to acknowledge that the impossible had happened. The first authenticated example sold privately for $19 million in 2008. But as news of the error spread, two more examples surfaced, one found in a coin roll purchased from a bank in Wyoming in 2009, and another discovered in an estate sale in Montana in 2011. Each subsequent discovery was authenticated using increasingly sophisticated testing methods, and each confirmed the same bizarre story. These were Lincoln pennies on wrong planchets, pennies that shouldn't exist according to official records, pennies that represented either the most spectacular minting error in U.S. history or the most audacious inside job ever perpetrated at a federal facility. The most recent sale of a 1995 D specimen occurred in 2022 when a Montana example came to auction at Heritage Auctions in Dallas. The pre-sale estimate was $20 to $30 million, and after fierce bidding between collectors from 6 different countries, the final hammer price was $27 million, making it the third most valuable Lincoln cent ever sold. And remember, only 3 examples have been authenticated, which means if you somehow found a 4th example, you could potentially negotiate an even higher price because of the extreme rarity. Now, here's what you need to know about identifying this error. First and foremost, weight is the dead giveaway. A normal 1995 D penny weighs 2.5 grams because it's made of copper-plated zinc, but the error pennies weigh around 8.1 grams because they're struck on Sacagawea dollar planchets, which are made of manganese brass alloy. So if you have a 1995 D penny and access to a digital scale that measures to 1 decimal point, weigh it immediately. If it registers anything over 3.0 grams, you need to investigate further. The second characteristic to look for is color. Normal 1995 D pennies are uniformly copper-colored, but the error pennies have a slightly different hue because of the brass composition underneath. In certain lighting conditions, you might see a golden shimmer or tint that doesn't match regular pennies. And if you can examine the edge of the coin without damaging it, you might see hints of the golden brass peeking through where the copper plating is thin or has worn away slightly. The third and most controversial characteristic is what some collectors call ghost imaging, where you can see faint traces of the Sacagawea design under the Lincoln portrait. This requires high magnification and excellent lighting, but several experts who've examined the authenticated examples claim they can see hints of Sacagawea's profile, feathers from the Native American headdress, and even parts of the word liberty in a different font than appears on the obverse of the Lincoln cent, as if the planchet was partially struck with Sacagawea dies before being struck again with Lincoln dies. The controversy surrounding the 1995 D hasn't died down. The FBI actually investigated the whistleblower's claims in 2004 and 2005, but they closed the case without filing charges, citing insufficient evidence of criminal wrongdoing. The investigation revealed that several Denver Mint employees from 1995 had indeed acquired significant wealth through coin sales in the late 1990s and early 2000s, but there was no direct proof connecting them to the error pennies, and without cooperation from witnesses, the case went nowhere. Some numismatists believe the entire story is a hoax. They argue that the authenticated examples were created outside the mint using sophisticated counterfeiting techniques. They point out that modern technology could theoretically allow someone to strike a Lincoln design onto a Sacagawea planchet in a private workshop, and they question why only 3 examples have surfaced if these were being smuggled out of the mint in quantities that would make the theft worthwhile. But the counter-argument is equally compelling. The authenticated examples all show die characteristics that perfectly match official 1995 D Lincoln cent dies, down to microscopic markers and die scratches that would be virtually impossible to replicate outside the mint. Plus, the planchet composition matches exactly what the mint was using for Sacagawea dollar experiments in the mid-1990s, including trace elements and alloy ratios that weren't publicly known at the time, making it extremely Unlikely that a private counterfeiter could have duplicated them. What we're left with is a mystery that may never be fully solved, but what we know for certain is that 1995 D. Lincoln cents exist on wrong planchets. They've been authenticated by multiple independent grading services. They've been tested using state-of-the-art scientific equipment, and they've sold for staggering sums to collectors who believe in their legitimacy. And that's enough to make every serious coin collector search through their 1995 D pennies with renewed vigor. The $27 million specimen is currently housed in a vault in Singapore, owned by a private collector who's loaned it out for museum exhibitions only twice. The coin has been photographed extensively, featured in numismatic journals worldwide, and has become a symbol of everything mysterious and exciting about error coins. It represents the possibility that even in our modern, technologically advanced era, with quality control systems and security measures, extraordinary things can still slip through the cracks. So what should you do if you think you found a 1995 D error penny? First, weigh IT using an accurate digital scale. If it's over 3.0 grams, you have something unusual. Second, examine IT under magnification, looking for color variations and ghost imaging. Third, do not clean IT or damage it in any way. Fourth, contact a reputable grading service and explain what you found. Fifth, prepare yourself for the possibility that it might just be a normal penny that happens to have accumulated dirt or corrosion that throws off the weight, but also prepare yourself for the possibility that you might have just discovered the fourth example of a $27 million error. The 1995 D has taught collectors that modern coins can be just as valuable and mysterious as ancient ones, that the story behind a coin matters as much as the coin itself, and that controversy and uncertainty can actually increase value rather than decrease it. Because collectors love a good mystery. They love being part of a narrative that's still being written, and they love the thrill of potentially discovering something that experts thought was impossible. Last 2005 Lincoln Penny, and we've finally arrived at the grand finale, the ultimate modern penny mystery, the coin that represents the absolute zenith of early 21st century numismatic anomalies, a specimen that's sold for $4 million and carries with it a story so bizarre, so technically improbable, that even now, nearly 2 decades after its creation, experts are still arguing about how it came into existence. Unlike the previous 3 pennies we've discussed, the 2005 Lincoln cent isn't valued primarily because of traditional minting errors like double dies, wrong planchets, or die varieties. No, this coin's incredible value stems from something far more unusual. It's what numismatists call a transitional composition error, meaning it was struck during the exact moment when the United States Mint was changing the metallic composition of pennies, resulting in a coin that's literally caught between 2 different eras of production, a frozen moment of transformation that shouldn't exist according to any official protocol. The year 2005 was significant in minting history because it marked a period of intense experimentation at the United States Mint. Rising copper and zinc prices were making penny production increasingly expensive, costing more than 1 cent to produce each penny, which is economic insanity when you think about it. The government was losing money on every single penny it manufactured. So mint officials were desperately testing alternative compositions, trying to find an alloy that would be cheaper to produce, but still maintain the familiar look, weight, and feel of the traditional penny that Americans had used for decades. What apparently happened, according to metallurgical analysis of the $4 million specimen, is that during this experimental phase, someone at one of the mint facilities, possibly Philadelphia, but more likely Denver or San Francisco, struck a 2005 dated Lincoln penny using an experimental planchet that contained a steel core coated with copper instead of the standard copper-plated zinc composition. This steel core composition had been discussed in mint planning documents as a potential cost-saving measure, similar to what Canada had already implemented with their own penny program, but was never officially approved for U.S. production in 2005, which means this coin represents an unauthorized or accidental test strike that somehow escaped the mint and entered circulation. The discovery of this coin is almost as remarkable as the coin itself. In 2014, a high school student in Oregon named Emma Rodriguez was participating in a class project about personal finance. And part of the assignment required students to go through pocket change and identify different coin designs. Emma was sorting through pennies at the kitchen table when she noticed something odd. One of her 2005 pennies stuck to a magnet that she was using to play with on the table. Now, as anyone who knows basic science can tell you, copper isn't magnetic and zinc is only very weakly magnetic. So a normal penny shouldn't react to a magnet at all. But this penny was strongly attracted to the magnet, sticking to it like it was made of iron or steel. Emma showed her physics teacher the next day, and being a scientifically curious person, the teacher ran some basic tests, confirming that the coin was indeed magnetic, which was impossible for a standard 2005 penny. They weighed it and found it was slightly heavier than normal at 2.7 grams instead of 2.5 grams. And when they examined it under the microscope in the school science lab, they noticed the copper plating seemed thicker and more uniform than on regular pennies. The teacher, recognizing this might be something special, contacted a local coin dealer who took one look at it, ran his own tests, and immediately knew he was dealing with something extraordinary. The coin was sent to PCGS for authentication, and after extensive testing, including X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy, magnetic susceptibility measurements, and composition analysis, they confirmed it was a steel core penny, graded at MS 65, and added a special designation noting it as a transitional. Composition error. Unauthorized experimental planchet. News of the discovery spread rapidly through the numismatic community, and within months, 3 more examples were found. One turned up in a collection of pennies someone had been saving to cash in at a Coinstar machine in Texas. Another was discovered by a coin roll hunter in Florida who routinely tested coins with magnets looking for oddities. And a third was found in a jar of change at a yard sale in Michigan. Each example was authenticated, and suddenly, the minting world had to confront the fact that experimental steel core pennies had somehow been released into circulation despite no official authorization. The first example to sell at auction, Emma's original discovery, went to Heritage Auctions in 2016, and the bidding was intense. Collectors understood they were bidding on a piece of minting history, a coin that represented a failed or abandoned experiment, a road not taken in the evolution of American coinage. The final price was $3.2 million, which at the time was considered almost unbelievable for a coin only 11 years old. The most recent sale, which occurred in late 2023, saw the Texas example change hands in a private treaty sale brokered by Stax Bowers for $4 million. The price increase reflected growing recognition in the collecting community that these 2005 steel core pennies might be even rarer than initially thought, if only 4 have been found despite millions of people handling billions of pennies every year. Then the total population might be in the single digits, making them exponentially rarer than even the 1995 wrong planchet errors. Now, here's what makes the 2005 steel core penny both exciting and frustrating. It's relatively easy to test for if you have a magnet. Any refrigerator magnet will do, but it's also difficult to find because you have to test literally every 2005 penny you encounter, and most people don't walk around with magnets in their pockets. But for those who are serious about finding one, the process is straightforward. Get a strong neodymium magnet, the kind you could buy online for a few dollars, carry it with you, and test every 2005 penny you get as change. If the penny sticks to the magnet, even weakly, you need to investigate further, weigh it carefully, examine it under magnification, and if everything checks out, get authenticated immediately. The metallurgical characteristics of the steel core 2005 pennies are fascinating. The steel core itself is approximately 1.8 millimeters thick, surrounded by copper plating that's about 0.05 millimeters thick, thicker than the plating on normal pennies. The total copper content is roughly 5% by weight compared to 2.5% on standard copper-plated zinc pennies. And the magnetic properties are unmistakable. These coins respond strongly to even weak magnetic fields, a characteristic that makes them unique among U.S. pennies. Some numismatists have theorized that these steel core pennies were intentionally released as part of a covert test to see how the public would react to a composition change. The mint might have deliberately put a small number into circulation to gauge whether anyone would notice or complain, planning to announce the change officially only if the test succeeded. But this theory has never been confirmed. And mint officials have consistently refused to comment on the 2005 steel core pennies, beyond acknowledging that they're aware of their existence. The controversy intensified in 2018 when internal mint documents were released under a Freedom of Information Act request. These documents showed that steel core penny proposals had been seriously considered in 2004 and 2005, with detailed cost-benefit analyses and production feasibility studies. The documents mentioned test strikes being conducted at multiple facilities, but provided no details about quantities, dates, or what happened to the test coins. This discovery lent credibility to the theory that the four known examples were escaped test strikes, rather than unauthorized experiments by rogue mint employees. What makes the 2005 steel core penny especially significant is what it represents for the future of American coinage. The United States eventually stopped producing pennies at all. Canada eliminated their penny in 2012, and there have been ongoing debates in Congress about whether the U.S. should follow suit. The 2005 steel core represents a moment of transition, an attempt to save the penny by making it cheaper to produce, an experiment that was abandoned but left behind tangible evidence of the mint's struggle with economic reality. For collectors, the 2005 steel core has become the holy grail of modern-era collecting. It's attainable, it's testable, and it's potentially worth millions, unlike ancient coins or 19th century rarities that most people will never encounter. 2005 pennies are everywhere. There are billions of them still in circulation, sitting in change drawers, rolling through bank counting machines, being spent every single day, which means the possibility of finding a steel core example is real. The $4 million sale in 2023 attracted attention from mainstream media, not just numismatic publications. Articles appeared in the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, and even on financial news channels, discussing how a penny could be worth 4 million times its face value. The coverage sparked a brief penny rush, where people across the country started testing their change with magnets. Coin dealers reported a surge in people bringing in 2005 pennies for testing, though of course no additional examples were found during that initial frenzy. The current whereabouts of the 4 authenticated examples are carefully guarded secrets. At least 2 are known to be in private collections. One is believed to be in a museum, though which museum won't publicly confirm it. And one is in the possession of the original finder, who's refused all offers to sell, choosing instead to keep it as a family heirloom and potential inheritance for future generations. All are insured for at least their sale prices, some for significantly more to account for appreciation. So, as we reach the end of this incredible journey through 4 of the most valuable pennies in American history, from the $71 million 1974 D with its spectacular multiple errors, to the $53 million 1992 D with its impossible close AM variety and struck-through damage, to the mysterious $27 million 1995 D that shouldn't exist according to official records, and finally to this $4 million 2005 steel core specimen that represents a failed experiment in cost reduction. What have we learned? We've learned that value isn't always about age, that modern coins could be just as rare and sought after as ancient ones, that errors are what create extraordinary value. That vigilance pays off because these coins are still out there waiting to be found. And most importantly, that the humble penny, the coin that most people don't even bother to pick up off the ground, can be worth more than most houses, more than most cars, more than most people earn in a lifetime. The 2005 steel core penny serves as the perfect conclusion to our story because it represents hope. It's proof that treasure hunting isn't just about digging through old estates or buying expensive collections. Sometimes it's as simple as testing your pocket change with a magnet, paying attention to details that other people overlook, and having the knowledge to recognize when something is special. These four pennies, collectively worth over $150 million, have all been found by ordinary people, a grandmother's jar, a student class project, an inherited collection, a random penny roll, which means you could be next. So the next time you get pennies back as change, don't just drop them in a jar and forget about them. Look at them, examine the dates, check for errors, test them with a magnet if they're from 2005, weigh them if you have a scale, compare them to normal pennies. Become a treasure hunter in your own pocket, because somewhere out there, right now, there are probably more of these million-dollar pennies sitting unnoticed in circulation. And it only takes one to change your entire life forever. The 2005 steel core penny isn't just a coin. It's a reminder that magic still exists in the modern world, that fortunes can be hidden in plain sight, and that sometimes paying attention to the smallest, most overlooked things can lead to the biggest discoveries of all.